Old versus new, this is an age-old battle, even with graphics cards, and that's why I've pinned the GTX 980 Ti versus the 1660 Ti to see how they're getting on in 2023, and which one is the better graphics card. But before I get into this video though, let me know in the comments down below, have you ever owned one of these graphics cards? On paper, both of these graphics cards share some similarities. They both have 6GB of video memory, support for DirectX 12.1 at a feature level, and lastly, their performance isn't too dissimilar from each other, on paper at least. But this is where their similarities end, because the GTX 980 Ti is a flagship card from 2015, whereas the 1660 Ti is a mid-range card from 2019. The 980 Ti has more CUDA cores and a bigger memory bus, however it has the slower GDDR5 memory. All of this is in a package rated for a 250 watt TDP, leading to a recommendation of a 650 watt power supply. On the other side of the coin is the 1660 Ti. It's built on a much more efficient process, which is the Turing architecture, 6GB of GDDR6 instead of the slower GDDR5 which is found in the 980 Ti, but it has a smaller memory bus and less CUDA cores. And there are certain efficiency gains here with a package rated for 120 watts, leading to a recommendation of a 300 watt power supply, but to be honest, I wouldn't run one of them with a 1660 Ti. So it's new versus old in today's video. Will the old and power hungry 980 Ti win with its brawn, or will the 1660 Ti win with its more efficient process and faster GDDR6 memory? Let's find out. I've put both of these graphics cards up against each other in a head-to-head benchmarking session on my testing system, which has a Ryzen 5 5600G, 32GB of dual rank, dual channel DDR4 memory running at 3200 MHz CL16, a Sabrent 1TB NVMe Gen 3 SSD, and an Acer Strix B550-F gaming. All testing has been done at 1080p with no FSR or any other upscaling methods, and both of the graphics cards have been left with their out of the box setting, so there's been no overclocking or any fan curve adjustments on either one of them. So let's get into the benchmarking. First game up today is Fortnite, and here, unlike usual, I set it to DirectX 11 with the regular settings that I like to use, so that's low with epic textures and a far view distance. The difference between both of these graphics cards today was, I would say it's kind of substantial, but both are getting very good frame rates, with the GTX 980 Ti getting 171 on average, with the 1660 Ti getting 200 on average. That's a 17% uplift in favour of the GTX 1660 Ti. Yeah, Fortnite is certainly playable on both of these graphics cards, and if you were to play with DirectX 12, you'd probably get more performance than this, especially if you're CPU bound, so that might be something to consider. Next game up is F1 22, and to be honest, I'm not going to sugarcoat this, it's a massive performance uplift in the 1660 Ti's favour. That is because with the average frame rate, it got a 37% performance uplift, which is absolutely huge. As always, benchmarking was done on the Wet Australian Grand Prix benchmark with the medium preset, so nothing was different between these two graphics cards. I did go back and double check, it's just how well the 1660 Ti plays this game. In terms of 1% lows, the 1660 Ti is also pretty good here as well, getting an extra 16 FPS over the 980 Ti's 90 FPS for the 1% low. So yeah, the newer card here is a much better buy, and it's a much better value as well. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 saw a pretty substantial performance uplift, I'd like to say, going up by 25% with the average frame rate. That is because the 980 Ti got 79 FPS on average, but the 1660 Ti got an extra 20 FPS, going up to 99 FPS. 1% lows were also substantially better with the 1660 Ti getting 69, nice, with the 980 Ti getting 45, so yeah, it's kind of no contest here either. Even if you wanted to play with the minimum preset and raise the textures up a bit, the 1660 Ti is going to be miles better in this game, so this is what I'd recommend here. Next up is Forza Horizon 5, and this game genuinely shocked me by how well it performs on the 1660 Ti, or maybe how poorly it performs on the 980 Ti. That is because the average frame rate saw a 61% uplift when moving to the newer graphics card, which is insane. With the high preset enabled, which does look pretty good, the 980 Ti got 61 FPS on average, but the 1660 Ti got 98. Yes, 61 FPS is certainly playable, but there's no competition here, if I'm honest. Just get the 1660 Ti. The 980 Ti is certainly not worth it in this title. Horizon Zero Dawn is up next, and usually with these older graphics cards I use the original preset, which is what I did today. Yet again, we see quite a big performance uplift when moving to the 1660 Ti, getting 31% uplift in average performance, going up from 80 FPS to 105 FPS for the averages. Looking at the 1% lows, and they also do rise, going up from 57 FPS to 74 FPS, so yeah, I think the much faster GDDR6 memory is helping out in this very memory intensive game, so that's why I reckon the performance is quite a bit better on the newer graphics card. So yet again, the 1660 Ti has kind of obliterated the 980 Ti here. GTA 5 is the game which saw the lowest performance uplift with the newer graphics card, and I don't know what that's down to. Maybe because GTA 5 is a bit of an older game, that could be down to it perhaps. However, the average FPS only went up by 8, going from 91 with the 980 Ti up to 99 with the 1660 Ti. With GTA 5, I do use the same benchmarking run for every single graphics card, so it's as consistent as I can get it. However, this results in a 9% performance uplift on average, which is sort of in line with what Tech Power Up was saying between these two graphics cards, so that sort of lines up. Maybe this chart is a bit older on Tech Power Up, and I don't know how much I should trust it now, to be honest, after this video. However though, on both graphics cards, GTA 5 is totally playable, so if this is the only game you want to play and you don't care about power efficiency, the 980 Ti is certainly not bad in this title. So, overall, I think it's fair to say that the 1660 Ti is a much better graphics card in 2023. On average, it performed about 27% better than the 980 Ti while using half of the power, maybe even less than half the power actually, which is pretty incredible. I think this is mainly down to developers and maybe partially Nvidia as well, not optimizing the 980 Ti as much, which is kind of fair, I guess. It did launch in 2015, so it's pretty old now, so yeah, but either way, the real world performance in the games at least I tested today means that the 1660 Ti is a much better graphics card. So the 1660 Ti will run faster, use less power while doing it, and it will also have better future support as well. It's 2 generations newer than the 980 Ti, which means it will be supported for much longer. However, one thing you do need to factor in though is it does cost a bit more than the 980 Ti on the used market, so this might be something to think about. So out of both of these graphics cards, which one would I buy? And I'm going to have to throw in a bit of a curveball here and say the GTX 1070. That is because it's got 2 extra gigabytes of video memory compared to both of these graphics cards, which in newer games, even at 1080p, will certainly help you out. It should also be cheaper than the 1660 Ti, yet it should go for around the same price as the 980 Ti, so yeah, if you shop around quite a bit on eBay, look for some good auctions on there, you should be able to find a pretty decent price on a GTX 970. I've seen some go for around £90 here in the UK, which is actually a pretty good deal. But if I had to specifically choose between the 980 Ti and the 1660 Ti, I would have to go with the newer card, and that is because it's just way more efficient, it performs a lot better. Yes, it does cost a bit more, but I think that cost is justified in this case. With an extra 27% more performance on average while using less than half of the power. And this is always good because your system will be running quieter, it'll be running cooler, and it'll be using less from the wall, because if you live in Europe like me, energy is certainly not cheap right now. Also, the 1660 Ti has better feature support as well, like it will be supported by Nvidia for quite a bit longer than the 980 Ti, and it also has the much better NVENC encoder, so if you want to get into streaming or you want to record your gameplay, the 1660 Ti is a much better purchase here, let alone for the performance uplift. So if longevity is your concern, I'd go for the 1660 Ti out of these 2 graphics cards, but I'd still recommend something like a 1070 or even a GTX 1080, as that is not a lot more, but it will perform quite a bit better than both of these graphics cards. Moving back to the 980 Ti, and I don't think it's aged entirely that well. I did make a video on it back then, but I didn't realise how much it was lagging behind the 1660 Ti, which is quite a lot. 27% performance is pretty big, if I'm honest. Couple this with, we don't know how long Nvidia's going to support it for. They could just end it next month if they wanted to. This would lead me to not wanting to buy the 980 Ti here in 2023. I just cannot recommend it unless if you get an obscene deal on it, like if you get it for like 50, 40 quid, something like that used. Also, I think the final nail in the coffin for the 980 Ti is just how cheap the GTX 1070 is. It's much more efficient. It's got 2 extra gigabytes of video memory, and it's built on the Pascal architecture, which is a much stronger architecture. That is just a much better value product in my opinion. So if you got this far, consider leaving this video a like and consider subscribing as well. It really helps out here on the channel, and if you want to see both of these graphics cards benchmarked individually, they will be up here and you can watch them if you want to. So with that being said, if you like this one, leave it a like, stay subscribed for more tech content, and I'll catch you in the next one.